All right, so we're here at the NAMM show, checking out Cranborne Audio. We got Sean here with Cranborne. Some cool new stuff. What do we have here, man?
Well, Kyle, you're a bit of an audio historian yourself. You know a lot about audio. So the Carnaby 500 is the world's first harmonic EQ. It's the first new analog audio circuit in about 4 decades.
Oh, right.
So, like every analog EQ that exists currently, it uses phase to equalize the signal, using something like an inductor, a gyrator, so on and so forth. These are circuits that were invented in the 60s and the 70s, and there hasn't been a lot of innovation in equalization in a long time. So that's what we wanted to change. We wanted to make an EQ for the modern age. I think with DAWs and plugins these days, a linear phase EQ in your plugin is a really great tool. It's got an unlimited GUI, you have unlimited amounts of settings and things you can do with it. So what's the purpose of an analog EQ in the modern hybrid workflow of a 21st century hybrid studio? And the answer to that is a color EQ.
Yes.
And people want to use analog EQs to add color to their recordings. So what we thought we'd make is the ultimate color EQ.
Cool.
And that's what the Carnaby is.
Right on. Awesome. So in other words, like if you're going to be sending out to the analog world, you're going to be doing something that digital can't do as well, right? Digital can do transparency and it can do clean very, very well.
And you can adjust cues to your heart content, exact frequency.
Yeah.
DAWs are incredible, right? They've completely revolutionized how we record music. They're amazing.
Yep.
But they do have some things that analog does better. And this is a great example of something that a DAW can't do easily, at least. There's a lot of great plugins out there. You might have a full channel strip of stuff to kind of do the kind of things that you'd want to do with Carnaby, whereas with Carnaby, it's just one module and it's just magic.
Nice. Let's hear some stuff. Can we get the camera in closer so we can take a look?
Absolutely. So what I'm going to do here is first I'm going to bypass everything, right? So these are basically 4 stereo groups right now. So I have drums here, I have a bass here, we have the instrument group here, we have the vocal group here. So these are currently OptoSync is enabled on every second module, so that this is effectively stereo EQs. All the controls are controlling this one and the next one, which is pretty cool on an analog EQ in and of itself. But so that's just to give you an idea of the track, right? So then I'm going to enable stuff. I've already set settings here, so I'm just going to start enabling all the tracks, so you can kind of hear what it kind of does. And
let me get some headphones on so I can hear too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get some headphones on too. So basically, here we have. So the track is going to restart now. So let's start with the vocals. So I'll bypass this. That's a good recording. It's a good capture. It's on a nice preamp, great singer, but you hear the woofiness, the boxiness, and stuff like that. Now that's enabled. That's bringing the sheen on the high end. That's the high frequency band doing that. On the mid band, we're bringing out the vocal presence. We're lifting it, and then we're giving him a subtle bass lift as well because it's quite intimate vocals. So we're giving him a small bass boost as well. It basically sounds like a finished track. If I bypass it now, it sounds like a raw take, So that's what it's a finisher, really. Oh, this sounds great when on the harmonies. It lifts it in the context of the mix, especially, right? So right now we're soloing this, but if I were to add everything else, see how it sits on top in a very natural way? And that's what Carnaby does. It's just a really magical EQ that kind of just does what you want to do in a magical way. Wow. So I'm going to do the drums now because the drums are really great. So that's enabled. I'm going to bypass it now. So, that classic kind of boxy snare, there's a lot of stuff you don't want to compress it, you don't want to EQ it. So this is a raw capture straight from a preamp, right? And I'll enable it. So I've added weight to the kick drum. So I have the frequency control dialed in around 80 hertz, a 60 or somewhere between 60 and 80 hertz. And I'm boosting it quite a bit. Now, if you did that with a normal EQ, it would just be boomy. It would just, it would just be too much because it's a fixed process that's always being applied and it isn't related to the input source. It doesn't have any relation. It's just a fixed process. Whereas with a harmonic EQ, with the Carnaby, it's generating harmonics that are musically related to the source material at all times because that's how it works. Cool. So, and then also on the drums here, we're adding a little bit of a mid boost here just to kind of lift that snare a little bit. And then on the high end, we added the snap of the snare, like at 5-6K. So the track recycled now, so let's start with the bass. So that's the raw bass right there. So I think it's like a P bass direct in, good bass tone, right? Like that's a good start of a bass tone. You can compress it, do whatever else. But there we go. That's what the car to be on. So what I've done is I boosted the low end quite a bit.
Yeah.
Normally you would not want to do that on an EQ. That would just sound too boomy, too much. But not on the Carnaby. Now the other crazy thing here is look how much I'm cutting that. That's the mid band. I have it set quite low. I have it set around like 700 hertz as the center frequency because I want to create room for everything else. Now normally when you do that on an EQ, you lose all the body and all the definition. But when you cut on the Carnaby, you're adding harmonics, even when you're cutting the fundamental, but you're adding harmonics around it. So it doesn't get empty sound. It just gets rounder but fixes the problem you're trying to create. So we have it creating a lot of space here. So now I'll bypass it. So it kind of sounds like it's compression, right? Well, because it is, because the input drive is really important to understand. So on some of the tracks, like on the vocal group that we were listening to before, I had the input drive dialed down. That's going to add less harmonics, fewer harmonics, I should say. Whereas on the bass track, I've cranked it here. It's adding more harmonics to that track. So that's what it does, and so it has like some dynamic behaviors. Well, it's almost like compression-like effects. Like I would say on the loudest transients, when you have the input drive going hard, it's gonna duck the loudest sounds by like 3 to 6 dB, but with clipping, not with compression.
Yeah.
So it's like a dynamic transient shaper as well. I don't know. It's like it's just
cool.
A crazy thing. It's a crazy thing.
That's amazing.
And then so then let's go to the instrument group. So now this is a great example of the cut. So look how much I'm cutting of the low end, and that's because in context in the mix I want it to sit above. So the vocals are there. You have the bass under it. So that's why we're doing a really drastic cut here. But look, normally if you cut that much, I mean, I have this set to 420 hertz, so all the way up, and I'm cutting it as much as I can. Normally on an EQ you do that, you've lost everything. But you don't on this. You still have the definition of the guitars. You still have the definition of the synths. And then what we're adding is that high-end sheen, that high-end air, and we're adding some mid boost, right? So now I'll bypass it.
Yeah, and like you said, if you were to put this with all the other tracks, then they may clash a lot.
They will clash.
But if you've carved out the space, yeah, I love that.
Exactly.
It's awesome.
So now I'll re-enable it, and finish track basically with just EQ versus that.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. When are these available, and what's the story with these?
So we'll start with the Legacy Edition actually.
Okay.
So this is the world's first harmonic EQ. It's bigger than Cranborne. It's bigger than us trying to sell a couple modules and stuff like that. It's audio history, and that's like we love this industry. So there's greats that came before us, people like Dave Hill, Rupert Neve, Graham Blythe, Fred Forsell. There's a lot of amazing people in this industry that have designed some of the greatest circuits that we all use and we all reference today and use as the baseline. So what we made the Legacy Edition for was like a kind of a thing to commemorate the world's first harmonic EQ, and that's why it's called the Legacy Edition. It's kind of weird to have a brand new product and already have a Legacy Edition, but what we're trying to say is basically like, this is a piece of audio history. There are 125 pairs that were handmade in the UK by our team, me, Ben, Ed. We hand-built these units, and then we did a cool design, kind of retro
beautiful.
70s, 80s. We broke every design rule. There's like 3 different fonts on it and stuff like
nice.
Like our logo's a totally different font and stuff. It's all sorts of design rules have been broken, but it looks cool. And it's a limited edition thing, and it comes with a certificate of authenticity and hand signed. And yeah, if you like the fact that us hand-built something, then that's the one for you. A little bit more expensive, but it comes as a pair. In a flight case as well.
And do you have to like pre-order those, or they're available?
They're available now.
Wow. Okay.
Well, while those supplies last.
Yeah.
Limit 125 pairs.
125.
In some territories are already sold out. So I think there's some left in the U.S. and places like that. But once they're gone for good.
All right.
So, and then the normal version, the standard edition, which is the Carnaby, that will begin shipping next month. We hoped it would be earlier, but the component crisis is a little bit weird. So all it takes is one component that you can't get, and then you can't make them. So, but they're going to be available next month.
Awesome. And then for anyone wondering what these are all in, so these are all 500 modules. And then tell us about this. And you also have another version of this. I believe this is an audio interface.
Yes,
version,
this
correct?
is the 500 R8. So this is a 28 input, 30 output USB audio interface.
Okay.
But the nice thing about it, we call it like a studio in a box. Basically, it has all the conversion that you could want integrated into an 8-slot 500 series rack. And in terms of the conversion, we're talking about reference grade conversion. So it competes against some of the most elite converters out there and will meet or exceed their performance. And that's all integrated into a 500 series rack. So and with a summing mixer, a monitor controller, and lots of I/O on the back too.
Yeah.
It's a studio in a box. It's basically, it replaces like 5-6 things boxes in your studio, which is obviously great for affordability, but it's also great when you think about home studios and project studios and stuff like that. You're getting a lot of power in a small box.
Small box.
And
yep.
this can sit right on your desk or in your rack on your desk and stuff like that, because it's got the monitor controller. You don't have a big sprawling studio anymore.
Yep. And if you've already got a interface with analog I/O or with ADAT connections, like I do, I've got actually the non-interface version of this. Which is
right
the
there, Kyle.
500
Yeah, exactly,
ADAT, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I also want to say that, while I really love my 500 chassis, the 500 ADAT, you can use these 500 modules with any 500 chassis.
Of course
correct?
you can,
Okay.
yeah. Including the Optos. So a question that we get on the Optos thing is, will that work in a non-Cranborne chassis? Absolutely it does. The way you just put two modules next to each other, the Optos sync just works.
Awesome.
So,
man, thank you so much
Thanks,
for showing
Kyle.
me this stuff.
Yeah,
This is
pleasure.
awesome.
Nice
Cool.
to talk to you, Kyle.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. And great NAM,
Yeah, have a good show.